Me and my friends decided to take a short road trip to the home of our friend Ashley's father. Ashley's father was going away to Europe for about a week for business, and while he was away, we agreed to house sit for him. His house was about an hour and a half drive from the town we all lived in at the time. Her father was a successful businessman who lived in a beautiful house, the type you saw in magazines. We were so excited to have the house all to ourselves for an entire week, but little did we know that the afternoon ahead would become a nightmare. On our way to his house, we stopped at the liquor store and got a few ingredients to make our favorite cocktails. When we pulled up to the store, we noticed a car parked in front with a man sitting in it. We noticed the car only because the engine was so loud. The car was a dark sedan that looked a little beat up. When we left the store, the car was still parked in the same spot. We pulled out of the lot and made our way to our destination, which was about another hour away. As we traveled on the very quiet back roads, the cars on the road became fewer. When Ashley happened to glance in the rearview mirror, she noticed that the man in the dark sedan had been following us for miles. Kara and I told her that maybe it was a coincidence that he was going in the same direction as us, but Ashley was adamant that we were being followed. I suggested that we take a wrong turn down a dead-end street to see if he was really following us. As Ashley turned down the dead-end street, the sedan behind us slowed down and also made the turn down the same street. At that point, we were all convinced that this was no coincidence. Nervous glances were exchanged between my friends and me as we continued driving. The man in the sedan seemed determined and was on our trail like a shadow. We started panicking, but we tried to keep our composure, knowing that we were on our own and we had no cell service to call for help. As we continued, there was no more conversation among us. We were basically silent. We were so desperate for cell service and kept turning our phones on and off, which became more and more frustrating. We came up with a plan to lead him to a populated area, hoping to alert more people to what was happening and find help. Finally, we entered a town about 30 minutes from where Ashley's dad lived. When we entered the town, the man's sedan fell back and ultimately disappeared in the shadows. There were signs leading to the town's police station, which is where we headed to file a report. We got out of the car and walked inside of the police station. We explained what had happened and they assured us that they would investigate what we told them. We gave them the address for where we were going and left them with Ashley's cell phone number. By the way, the entire time we had no cell service until we got to the police station. That day, we made it to house safely without any more issues. We hung out by the pool with cocktails and settled down that evening to watch a movie. Then, a knock on the door startled us. It was a police officer standing at the door with a concerned look on his face. He let us know that the man who was following us earlier that day was taken into custody. He was reported by another lady who he had begun following after he lost us. He actually followed her all the way to her driveway before she even noticed him. We were so happy that we had detected him before he followed us all the way back to the house. We were so relieved and felt like we could fully enjoy the rest of our week without looking over our shoulders.
Last summer my wife and I decided to take a road trip from where we live in New Mexico to visit my brother and his new girlfriend in Las Vegas. The trip would take about 10 hours total, and to avoid traffic, we decided to complete most of our trip in the middle of the night, so we loaded up our car and left home at about midnight. The road we traveled on for the first few hours had one lane going in each direction. For miles, we were the only car on the very dark road which had no streetlights. Suddenly another car traveling in our direction on the other side of the lines that separated the lanes was speeding towards us. Beside me, my wife clasped her hands together, her eyes wide with fear. Our peaceful road trip had taken a terrifying turn as a drunken driver swerved into our lane, nearly sending us careening off the road. Adrenaline ran through my veins as I fought to keep control of the car. The headlights of the oncoming vehicle blinded us for a split second. I could barely see a thing. I veered sharply to the right, narrowly avoiding a collision. I could hear the tires screeching in my ears as my heart pounded against my chest. My poor wife let out a horrifying cry. In the few years we were married, I had never heard so much fear in her voice. The drunk driver continued speeding down the road, in the wrong lane. It was obvious that he had no clue the danger he had put my wife and I in. My instincts kicked in, and I made the split-second decision to pursue him. I was determined to prevent him from endangering anyone else. I sped up quickly and tried to catch up to him. The road felt even darker than before. The darkness was swallowing our surroundings. The drunk driver swerved erratically, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. We struggled to keep up, our hearts pounding with a mix of adrenaline and dread. The night air seemed thick with malevolence, as if it conspired against us. Suddenly, the drunk driver's vehicle veered off the road, crashing into a bunch of trees. Our car screeched to a halt, and we watched before us as the car burned. Everything went up into flames. I could believe how grateful we were that we had escaped an accident with this reckless driver. I reached for my phone and called 911, who told us to wait at the scene. In the distance, we heard sirens which grew louder with each passing moment. The police arrived, and we told them everything that happened. It took weeks before my wife and I regained our composure. We were haunted by the memory of such a traumatizing experience. The road trip that was meant to be a romantic adventure had turned into a terrifying fight for our lives. We vowed to cherish each moment, to appreciate the fragility of life, and to never take a single road trip for granted.
My friend Jamie had just gotten out of a bad relationship, and we decided to go on a girls' trip to get her mind off the breakup. We would be traveling from where we live in New York to Florida, stopping in a few cities along the way, so we had planned to be on the road for a long time. Jamie and I would take turns driving, switching about every 2 hours. As late night approached, we decided we were both tired and needed some rest. To save money, we decided it would be a good idea to sleep in the car at a rest area. It was about 11 o'clock when we pulled into a rest area off the highway somewhere in Virginia. It wasn't one of those super populated rest areas, but when we pulled in, we noticed a few cars and trucks were there, including a police car, which made us feel safe. It was shortly before midnight when I fell asleep. Jamie was asleep before me. At about 1:15 in the morning, I heard tapping on my window, and I jumped up to see a very large man with a beard staring right into our car. "Put your window down," he said. "What the fuck do you want?" I yelled, waking Jamie, who was obviously a heavy sleeper. She looked scared out of her mind, and so was I, but what a way for her to wake up. Before I could get another word out, he said, "You have a flat tire, ma'am. I'm just letting you know." "Okay, thank you," I said. "I will take care of it." "I can help you if you'd like," he said with a creepy smile. "No, thank you," I told him, before he walked away and disappeared into the darkness. We looked around the parking lot and noticed that most of the cars were gone except for a black pickup truck on big wheels with tinted windows. The windows were so dark we couldn't see inside, and at the other end of the lot there were 2 empty cars parked side by side. The police car that was there when we first arrived was no longer there, and that made us feel a lot less safe. We sat in the car for about 2 minutes, not knowing what our next move should be. We were looking around the entire time for that big scary guy, wondering where he disappeared to and whether he would return. We finally built up enough courage to step out of the car to check the tires. I would check the tires on the driver's side, and Jamie would check the tires on the passenger side. We both turned on the flashlights on our cell phones since it was so dark and foggy outside. We checked the tires, and there were no flats on either side. As we were getting back into our car, We heard the voice of the man who was tapping the window earlier. He was yelling, "Hey girls," and speed walking towards us from the wooded area behind us. We got in the car so fast and locked our doors, and I sped out of the parking lot. I looked in the rearview mirror and the man was getting into the black pickup truck. We turned onto the dark road and he exited the parking lot a few moments later, following us with his high beams on. His lights were so bright I could barely see anything. He followed us for about 3 miles until suddenly we were hit from behind. I couldn't believe this was happening to us. We were in the middle of nowhere on a dark road with a freaking psycho. I sped up and he sped up too and pulled on the side of our car and yelled through the window, "Pull over." Jamie picked up her phone to call the police, but her phone suddenly died. I handed her my phone, which had one service bar and was also being used for GPS to get us back to the highway. We called the police and they were able to pull up our location and told us there would be a police officer coming towards us from the opposite direction about 6 miles away. While we're on the phone with the police, the pickup truck hit us again from the driver's side, almost knocking us off of the road. The entire time he was laughing, we were both screaming and crying, and the police officer on the phone was trying to calm us down. About a half a mile down this road, we could see flashing lights. We knew it was the police, and we were still scared, but knew that this whole ordeal would soon come to an end. From the time we saw the flashing lights to the time the police got up to our cars, it was only about 10 seconds. The crazy guy was still to the left of us on the side of oncoming traffic. As we approached the police cars, we came to a complete stop, and so did his truck. He jumped out of his truck and ran into the woods while about police officers chased him. We got out of our car and our rental car was damaged so badly from being hit so many times. We sat in the police car while they took our statements, and that's when we saw flashlights coming from the woods. It was the police with the crazy man in handcuffs. We tried not to make eye contact with him, but I could feel him staring at us. By the time the whole thing was over, we were wide awake. We don't know what plans that creep had for us, but he was trying hard to lure us out of the car. Some of our friends and family thought that was going to kidnap us. The police later told us that he was drunk and high on drugs the night of the incident. They also said they found a machete in his car along with duct tape and fentanyl. We never made it to Florida. We decided to return our rental car and flew home early. We decided that the next time we go on vacation, we would fly instead. We did travel to Florida a few months later and we flew. I know some of the people listening may enjoy road trips, and to each his own. If anyone decides to go on a road trip, you should consider staying in a hotel instead of sleeping in a rest stop because you can't put a price on your safety.